Let's talk about the jurisdiction that no one wants to defend, but a number of fund managers still use, the British Virgin Islands, or BVI. If you've been in fund circles for any length of time, you've probably heard the skepticism. But here's the truth. The BVI gets a bad rap, but it's not deserved, at least not across the board. For the right fund profile, BVI is a legitimate, efficient, and increasingly regulated option. The key is knowing when it fits and when it doesn't. This is part 3 of a 6-part series on fund domiciles and what LPs really see when they look at your jurisdiction. Today we're breaking down BVI, the efficiency play, the perception challenges, and how to use it without raising red flags. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Corey, a lawyer helping entrepreneurs decode law, technology, and innovation. In today's video, we're continuing our series on how LPs interpret fund domiciles and why your jurisdiction choice matters more than ever in 2026. So here's what we're covering today. What BVI actually offers as a fund domicile and why it's still in the mix for consideration. Next, we'll look at how LPs perceive BVI, the good, the bad, and the nuanced. And finally, when BVI makes sense and how to position it so that LPs don't fill in the blanks with assumptions. So what BVI actually offers? Let's start with the basics. The British Virgin Islands has been a fund domicile for decades. It's not new, it's not unregulated, and it's not going away. The BVI's private investment fund regime, or PIF, actually mirrors a lot of what you see in Cayman. Registration with the Financial Services Commission, requirements around audit, valuation, and custody, a legal framework that sophisticated investors understand. So why does BVI have a different reputation than Cayman? 2 reasons: cost and association. On cost, the BVI is simply cheaper to set up and maintain than Cayman or Singapore. There are lower government fees, fewer ongoing requirements, faster registration, and for managers watching their budget, that matters. On association, BVI has historically been used by smaller vehicles, family offices, and structures that prioritize speed over institutional optics. That's created a perception, fair or not, that BVI is Cayman light. But perception is not reality. The regulatory framework is real, and the question is whether it fits your fund and your LP base. So how LPs perceive BVI? Now let's get into the LP perspective because this is where it gets nuanced. When institutional LPs, let's take large pensions, sovereign wealth funds, major endowments, see BVI on a fund document, they often pause. Not because BVI is illegal or problematic, but because it is not what they typically see from established managers. Their internal committees are oftentimes trained to expect Cayman, Delaware, or increasingly Singapore, and BVI can stand out in that sense. But here's the flip side. For family offices, high net worth individuals, smaller institutional allocators, or specific jurisdictions in Asia, BVI doesn't carry the same baggage. These LPs are often more focused on the manager, the strategy, and the terms rather than the domicile itself. So the perception divide looks like this in broad strokes. Large institutions are more cautious and they may require extra due diligence or pass entirely. For smaller allocators and family offices, they tend to be neutral to positive, especially if the fund is well structured. Knowing your LP base is everything here. If you're targeting mega institutions, the BVI might create friction. If you're raising from a tighter circle of sophisticated investors, it probably won't. Next, let me address something head on: the myth that BVI is unregulated. This used to be closer to true. Years ago, BVI was more of a no questions asked jurisdiction, and that reputation stuck. But the reality in 2026 is very different. The BVI has implemented significant regulatory upgrades over the past several years. The private investment fund regime requires registration, annual filings, and compliance with anti-money laundering rules. The Financial Services Commission has enforcement authority. Is it as heavy as Singapore's MAS? No. Is it as deep as Cayman's SEMA infrastructure? Not quite. But it's not so different. Unregulated moniker is simply inaccurate. BVI has right-sized regulation. It's typically lighter than Cayman, but it is very real. The managers who get into trouble are the ones who treat BVI like there are no rules. There are rules. You follow them and BVI works fine. When should you actually consider BVI? So here's my framework. First, you're an emerging manager, you're launching your first fund, capital is tight, and you're trying to get to market without burning your runway on setup costs. The BVI lets you do that. Second, you're running a family office vehicle or a single family co-investment structure. You don't need the institutional optics because your LP base is closely held. Efficiency matters more than signaling. Third, you're launching a niche strategy that prioritizes speed. Digital assets, certain hedge fund structures, situations where time to market is critical and your investors understand the trade-offs. Fourth, your LP base is sophisticated but not institutional. High net worth individuals, family offices, investors who evaluate managers, not domiciles. If you check one or more of those boxes, BVI deserves a look. It's not the right answer for everyone, but it's the right answer for some. Here's the key to using BVI effectively. You don't let LPs make assumptions. If you're silent about why you chose BVI, investors will fill in the blanks. And those blanks usually aren't flattering. They'll assume you went cheap, or you're avoiding scrutiny, or you don't know any better. So get ahead of it. First, explain your rationale. In your fund materials, your due diligence, be upfront. We selected BVI because it's cost efficient for a fund of our size, and it provides the regulatory framework we need without the unnecessary overhead, as an example. Secondly, over-deliver on governance. Appoint credible service providers, use a reputable auditor, document your valuation policy, show LPs that you're taking governance seriously, even if the jurisdiction doesn't necessarily force you to for that specific item. Third, consider a structure upgrade path. If your fund grows and you start raising from larger institutions, you can always establish a Cayman or Delaware vehicle down the line. Let LPs know that you're thinking ahead. Fourth, be confident, not defensive. If you choose BVI thoughtfully, own it. Defensiveness signals doubt. Confidence signals that you know what you're doing. The BVI works when you control the narrative. It could fail when you let others write the narrative for you. All right, so let's bring it together. The BVI is not unregulated. It's right size regulation for the right fund profile. LPs perceive BVI differently depending on who they are. Large institutions may be cautious, family offices and smaller allocators are often neutral to positive, and in the Asia markets, there are specific jurisdictions that prefer BVI versus Cayman. BVI also makes sense for emerging managers, family office vehicles, niche strategies, and funds with sophisticated but non-institutional LP bases. The key is controlling the narrative. Explain your rationale. Over-deliver on governance. Don't let LPs fill in the blanks with negative assumptions. Your structure speaks before you do. If BVI is the right fit, you own it, back it up with how you actually run the fund. Okay, so that's part 3 in the books. In part 4, we're heading to Delaware, the fiduciary gold standard. I'll break down why Delaware carries more weight than any other jurisdiction, how it shapes LPs' expectations globally, and when you should consider a Delaware structure even if you're not US based. Join me on the path to decoding law, technology, and innovation to grow your business. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Until next time.